Now, once you've got your privacy team, with that said, how do you organize? And you could do a centralized approach, you could use hub and spoke, and of course you could use decentralized. And we're asking a survey question here. Obviously, with any kind of organizational approach, it's about fit to purpose. So it may vary by company, which makes most sense. But nonetheless, what you see here is just the privacy index scores. And so even though centralized with a single privacy office isn't taken by all companies, certainly those who are doing so inch ahead. I don't want to say surge ahead as we did before. The global average is 61. Those with the centralized approach sit marginally, but 5 points higher in terms of their privacy index score. Those with hub and spoke are decentralized, are sitting right. I'd say a 1% difference it might be statistically significant, but I don't know if it's substantively different. They're sitting close to the average. And then we saw that earlier in terms of your approach to regulation. If you take a principles-based approach and you really focus on what's behind the legislation and how your company is going to approach that, you score much better in terms of your privacy competence. You're up there at 73%. If you take a hybrid approach to regulatory matters, you sit just, again, marginally above the average. Take just a rules-based regular approach, you're lagging at 56%. But I mentioned this earlier, now we've quantified it. What if you have no privacy strategy at all? Failing miserably. So if your company doesn't take any sort of approach to privacy in terms of a strategy, maybe you've got cookie consent or something, but that's not part of a strategy. It's just kind of like somebody's threw a few things on a checklist. Then self-reportedly, when we look at our privacy index scores, those companies do miserably, 13%. Again, our average was 61%, but 13% by any measure is a dismal score. And so we see, as I mentioned earlier, that a principles-based approach is best to how you tackle privacy. And I think you made that point as well, Paul.
Yes, I think it's, got 2 points for me here is one of the things I always want to stress is your organization structure may change over maturity, right? It's when I started out at Kellogg, everything was very, right. The focus initially was to centralize things, even though, the company's in 160 odd countries, right? And there were regional, jurisdictions and different teams and so forth, and they had legal and so forth. It was important from the beginning to have it centralized. It's like the old days, right? When we don't understand something, what do? We bring the brain trust together. We bring people together, start sharing, and then from there, things can tend to morph as people become comfortable with that. So I can see, while I certainly benefit from a centralized organization, over time, I had to go to more of a hub and spoke approach. So no one is right and wrong. We certainly see some corollaries, which you've explained and will continue to explain. So organization structure early on, to me, central is the best approach. As far as how do we approach regulations, I too see more and more people beginning to focus more on the principles as opposed to, the hardcore controls, right, that we would often see if we're dealing with the IT team, right? And nothing against them. That's how they measure, and that's great. But it's a little bit different than perhaps privacy needs a measure. We need to be much more flexible. We don't have a lot of things that are absolutely precise every step of the way in the privacy world. There's a lot more gray involved. It's not that this is running or not running. It's running to an extent. I mean, there's got to be much more fluidity there. There seems to be some emergence, some what I'll call for this purpose as a secret sauce, the ingredients for success, if you will. And as we look at that, the first aspect is, as we talked about, is centralizing teams, at least initially. And these are kind of the key ingredients. So centralized teams is one. Another key ingredient is to measure outcomes. So again, KPIs and doing some level of measurement. The next one, of course, is embracing frameworks, those principles, gap principles, you name it. Those are the things that we're kind of talking about where they're much more, vague, if you will, which gives us much more flexibility. But in the end, they're very consumer centric, which is in all of this, right? When we boil down all these regulations, what are we trying to do? We're trying to impact those that are providing us information about themselves. We're trying to show that we're responsible with their information and hopefully provide them a value benefit back as part of that. And then the last one of the secret ingredients is, as you just stated, the purpose built tools, focusing in on specific areas that need to be reviewed. It could be a whole platform or it could be pieces, right, that
Right.
are important in this situation.